There is no better way or more important way to start a festival like this, where we're talking about truth and lies and fakes and forgeries, than the topic of artificial intelligence, AI, as we call it, KI in German. AI is already with us. It's here to stay. It's no longer something that's happening in the future. We use it every day. AI is already transforming how we connect with audiences, how we market events, how we create artworks and books, and how we run our organizations. From AI-generated exhibitions to automated marketing, all of us working in the arts and in the book trade are being asked to adapt to this new technology. AI's efficiency, innovation, and automation are exciting, but parallel to that, there are the job losses and the ethical and strategic questions and decisions that we need to make to ensure that AI aligns with our values and that our readers and audiences continue to trust us. Now, here is the time to have those difficult discussions, to remove the fear, and to ensure that instead of AI taking over and taking our jobs and making human creativity redundant, which is what most people are worried about, that we're in control and making AI work for us. Now that is my way of introducing my colleague Emma House, who will actually put all our minds at rest and excite us as well in the prospects, but also enlighten us over the dangers of AI. Emma has extensive insider knowledge about the impact of changes due to artificial intelligence in the publishing trade, in libraries, and in the media. Now, I've known Emma a long time. She's an international publishing consultant, wanted all over the world. She's worked for a quarter of a century for books and magazines. She was head of international development at the London Book Fair and Deputy CEO of the Publishers Association. She's chair of the Scholarly Networks Security Initiative, think what that means, cybersecurity. Project manager of Quick Reads, which is an adult literacy initiative run by the Reading Agency. And she's strategic advisor to a number of AI startups in publishing. Few. And we've only got 40 minutes to tell you everything. So we're going to try our absolute hardest to do that. Emma, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Let's look at where we are. Where is the situation now in publishing, copyright, the legal situation for all of us? You know, how would you describe the current situation?
So we're at the start of a journey, I would say, and AI at the moment is the worst it's ever going to be. And so
be reassured.
It's going to change. It's going to change. We're at the start of the journey. I think the emergence of the large language models in our lives came as quite a shock to most people as we suddenly were faced with this new tool, ChatGPT and Claude and many others that are out there, and wondering how did this suddenly appear? And they appeared by training their models on copyrighted materials without permission, without transparency, without compensation to those creators. And so we're in a situation of unregulation. There's no regulation over the LLMs, how they get
LLMs are
the large language models, how they train their models on data and on copyrighted materials. And so I think there's understandably a huge amount of nervousness, particularly amongst creators, about what the future looks like. But on the other hand, we're seeing AI for good. We are seeing how AI is being deployed in the medical industry, for example, how it's teaching us about climate change, how it's really drawing on the data sets that it's able to draw upon to give us efficiencies and solutions to many problems that have been out there.
Now, we can understand why, particularly in the book trade, authors, translators, and creatives are so anxious about AI, because, as you say, the worst has in many ways already happened.
Yes.
It's already scraping data, harvesting the words that authors have written, and there has been no control. Now, this control actually theoretically should come under the copyright law, copyright and patents law. And of course, in the UK and across most of Europe as well, we still think of ourselves as part of Europe, I hasten to add, but it's the laws are quite outdated. They can't possibly have taken into account what's going to happen with artificial intelligence.
And they can't keep up quickly enough. And often when laws are made, there can be unintended consequences. So in the UK, for example, we have a text and data mining exception where the machines are allowed to go in and crawl the data with the caveat that it cannot be used then for commercial purposes.
So it's only for, so there is permission to use this data.
Correct.
But only for, is it research and education?
For research and education, so not for commercial purposes. So that's the key here. And the ambiguity is, can it be used for training? And
you mean training AI?
Correct. Training those large language models.
So where is the data coming from when we hear about this general term about generative AI, generating this artificial intelligence based on our words? Where is this coming from?
Well, simply from the internet. And if you think about it in the terms of books, when you go in and have a conversation with ChatGPT, for example, it's like having a conversation with somebody who's read every book in the world.
Mm. So it's the best possible
source. That's the best way of putting it, yes. And it would be the same if we think about images and painting and music lyrics and other forms of creativity. It's all in there. So our friend, in inverted commas, ChatGPT, has seen every painting, has read every song lyric, has read every book, every poem. So they've absorbed every form of creativity that's out there to be able to then regurgitate a response based on the data.
So why has it already become so dangerous and difficult to control?
Because it's done the training already, I guess. And at the moment, there are no controls over future creativity and future words that are out there. So the big question for publishers, for example, is, and authors, how do we protect our creativity from further training? How do we protect our new creativity from further training? Because the AI can only develop and get better if there's new works for it to be trained on.
We'll talk about what we can do, so don't get too worried by the end. But I think it's worth also looking at some of the most interesting data that came out of Frankfurt Book Fair, which was very recent and is the most recent most recent facts and data that we've been able to find. And this actually just goes to show how nervous and unprepared we all are as writers or creatives generally, and in this enormous publishing industry all over the world. And some of the, if you just hear this particular one, 31%, there was a big survey conducted at Frankfurt Book Fair, which, as you know, is the largest book fair in the world. 31% of respondents said they were ethically opposed to the use of AI. Now, in a way, that's a problem in itself, but we'll discuss why that's a problem. 33% said they're not interested in using AI to support their work, and 43% said AI training is not a good use of their time. Now, in a way, are they resisting change for the sake of resisting change and because they're afraid of it? Or are we just too uninformed? Are there too few regulations for people to embrace it? Is there an inevitability for the book trade that they will have to adopt artificial intelligence?
So I think there is an inevitability, certainly.
Try saying that earlier.
Yeah. certainly within the industry. I think for creators, it will always remain a choice as to whether you use AI to enhance your creativity.
Do we have a choice, though?
I think creatives do. I think the publishing industry probably doesn't, because it's a commercially competitive space, right? And once some people are using it for efficiencies, and to enhance their publishing services, for example, then I think everybody has to use it. And all the publishers are using it in one form or another.
Do they maybe admit they're not using it?
I'd say so. Or maybe they don't know they're using it. You know.
How can you not know that you're using AI?
Well, I think if you're an everyday person that shops on Amazon, for example, then you're using AI. Well, Amazon's using AI to deliver you personalized recommendations, for example. If you go to the doctors and have medical tests, the medical profession's using AI to analyze those medical tests. So you may not be using it directly, but you are in some way interacting with it. I think the choice for publishers is how do they use it in an ethically and responsible manner that is transparent to the authors that they're working with, that's transparent with the readers at the end of it as well. But I think people will use Grammarly, for example, to check their manuscripts. That's using AI. Even Microsoft Word these days has AI built into it, which you can switch off. But there are tools out there to improve discoverability of books, for example, to help the reader find the right book and generate more sales for the author. So are we opposed to that kind of use of AI, for example?
So it's about demonstrating what works and what doesn't work for you, but it's also about each of us. I mean, this is the thing, of course, that we're all told to take responsibility for our own education, self-improvement and all these, but it's very much putting the burden on the individual, which is quite hard, because as individuals we're asked to take responsibility for everything in our lives. How can we educate ourselves in something as massive as AI?
It's a huge topic, and I think at the moment we do have a choice, and we do have a choice whether to consciously go on and instead of doing a Google search, you ask ChatGPT instead, for example. It's quite interesting to compare the two. And for a beginner starting out in their journey of using AI, that's a good place to start, for example. Just test the difference between the answers that you get back from Google versus ChatGPT. But many people are using it, for example, to do their household accounts, for example. You could use it in that, just to create efficiencies in your personal day-to-day life as well.
So to be aware of what it can do for you without in any way obstructing your intellectual abilities or your creativity, if you like to use that very broad term.
Exactly, like even doing your Christmas shopping, typing in the person that you're buying for and asking ChatGPT to give you some suggestions on Christmas gifts.
Well, I don't know whether I'm going to do that. I don't think my family would be very happy. So, yeah, this is what AI gave you. Don't blame me. Now, there was another really interesting part of the survey at Frankfurt Book Fair, another interesting result that came out that, and this is probably the crux of it, the inadequate controls over the use of copyrighted material. That 86% of people said, or people in the book trade said, there are inadequate controls. Now that is a fact. So we've got to this situation where all this data is being harvested and used in the training of generative AI, and this is a real problem. There are already cases, of course, across Europe, across the EU, and
globally. Yeah, I think there's about 80 cases going on at the moment in different courts in different countries and jurisdictions where creatives and creative organizations have brought legal cases against the AI companies, taking different slants like copyright infringement, for example, and trademark infringement, so different angles within copyright law to try and get some precedents and some compensation and some legislation in place as to how this can be regulated. It's completely unregulated everywhere in the world at the moment. So,
do AI and copyright, can they work together?
They can work together very well. So I think copyright laws, in principle, are robust. They provide a framework where creatives can be remunerated, they can be compensated, there can be licensing arrangements, and most of all, they give creators choice. You know, do we opt into this? Do we give permission for this? So I think the framework is in place. It just needs to be applied to the world in which these large language models are operating, and give creators choice. Do we want our materials to be used for training? If so, we want it to be transparent and we want remuneration for it. So I think those are the three things.
Transparency and remuneration.
And choice.
And choice.
Those are the three words that I would say creators need to have in their mind.
Now that's part of what should happen. It's not actually happening yet. Because, you know, we'll all know people who are absolutely despairing about the way that AI is just, you know, sort of engulfing everything, and we're feeling out of control, complete lack of control. How many of those cases that you mentioned are actually successful? Because, you know, you say there's copyright law and it's robust, but is it robust enough to handle this?
So I think it depends. There's a lot of different factors. It's a tricky space to operate. Because there can be examples. There's one case, for example, where it was brought in the US about training AI, but because the plaintiffs bringing the case could not prove where the training took place, in which jurisdiction, then the case fell apart. But there has been a recent ruling in Germany where the Music Association representing musicians brought a successful case against OpenAI and ChatGPT about the use of copyrighted materials for training. So it's a bit of a landmark decision that's only just happened. And of course, it's not the end of the road. There will be appeals. There will be lots of, it's a journey, as I said at the beginning. But I think that was a step in the right direction. But it's a battle.
It is a battle. In the US, I think there's been a success. Several authors campaigned for payment, I think, from Meta for using their work, and I think there have been some successful
So there was the Anthropic case.
Anthropic.
Yeah. But the problem with the Anthropic case is it was settled out of court, so there's no legal precedent there. So whilst there is the opportunity for some compensation, what we haven't done is set a precedent in the legal space.
So there is an awful lot to do. This, and I hope this doesn't seem sort of too techie and difficult, but this is so fundamental to everything that we're talking about at this festival, about how we create, how we think about, you know, just the books we buy as well. So I hope we're explaining it in ways that people can understand. And I think we need to also talk about, of course everybody does, about the tech industry itself and those people, mostly men, who are running these enormous industries and seem to have no particular insight or even, I think, care over what is happening now. It's all about making money, blah, blah. You know, how true are these fears, really? And is it no better than kind of this ruthless power and wealth creation tool for a lot of white males?
Well, I think, as I said, there is a phrase out there which is called AI for good. And the way that AI is being deployed in many different sectors is groundbreaking and will develop and deliver the most amazing results. As I say, particularly in the medical industry, and there's developments. You hear it on the news every day about how the deployment of AI tools is making it much easier to spot diseases earlier on, for example. But
that's not what we hear all the time. We hear about these.
For creators, it's a different story, and to kind of bring it back to writers and creativity, then I think for most people, we can see it's a tool that's out there. It doesn't impact our daily lives, but for writers and creators, it does. And there's two extremes. There's complete fear of being replaced and human creativity disappearing. And then there's a vast excitement about the opportunities that it could present if it's deployed properly and ethically and responsibly.
But if all that money that was once put into the internet or Facebook and so on, Instagram, all those different platforms, if all that money is now going into AI and creating a huge economic bubble, which may burst, of course, in similar ways to previous occasions, How can we as individuals resist that? Because that's what most people fear.
Yeah, I think it's about trying to take control. And you mentioned Facebook, for example. So Facebook from the very beginning, where you're uploading your words, uploading your photographs, is storing all of that information, storing all of that data, which is then being used to train the models moving forward. So I think it's about being aware of your rights over privacy controls, for example, and putting your own checks and balances in place. So your privacy settings in the social media, for example. But at the same time, part of us, we don't have control and we don't have choice. It is out there, it is happening.
Do you think that writers should, and booksellers and all of us in the trade, so to speak, should actually take on this responsibility and make some kind of effort to take control, as you say? I mean, there is one initiative I know to put on the front of book covers, to put,
yes.
I think, made by humans. I think that's the label that is put on a book cover. That, in other words, it's not a novel that's been generated by AI, which, of course, there are novels being written by AI now.
Yeah, I think that's part of the transparency, isn't it? And I think we owe it to our readers as well as our writers to be transparent about whether a book that is for sale has been created by a human or by a machine. Readers should have that ability to make their own choices as to whether they want to read a book that's been written by a machine or by a human.
Have you tried reading a book
I have not,
by a machine?
actually. I have not. But one thing that was quite interesting, I don't know if you saw, there was a painting that went on sale at the end of last year that was done by a robot. And it sold for $1 million in an auction house. But it was clearly marked that it was created by a machine, and whoever bought it knew that it was created by a machine, and they still decided to purchase it. So why shouldn't it be the same for books?
There is a difference, I think, when AI is harvesting this data. The AI cannot distinguish between fiction and non-fiction, which is an interesting distinction, because then it must be more difficult for AI to write novels, you would have thought.
Exactly. I mean, I think there are certain genres where AI can possibly write some novels. So if we think back to the Mills and Boon days and where it's formulaic.
You mean romance
novels where it's quite formulaic. Then
or cozy crime.
Cozy crime, maybe.
Some of those do read sometimes as though they are written by a formulaic
and there are some
method.
people that are going to want to read those, you know.
Yeah.
But I think the whole conversation around creativity and AI is a step in a completely different direction.
A few years ago, translators of fiction and non-fiction asked to have their names put on the front of novels and books, as you know, translated by so-and-so. That became a really big campaign.
It did.
Translators have achieved enormous things in the last few years. This is particularly literary fiction and poetry and so on. But now translators are engaged in a different campaign, which is to stop AI, in this case, taking over their jobs completely. Now, for translators, there is a real danger, isn't there?
There really is.
Can you explain what it is? And
yeah, there's no doubt about it that the role of the translator will change. I think that the capabilities that AI has to translate the written word is there already, and it will improve. So whereas now it may not be perfect, it certainly will improve. But I think when it comes to the translation of literary fiction, what the AI can't do is translate the context, the emotion, the lived experience that a translator will have when reading the text. It's not simply a data exchange, which is what AI is. It's a data. It's purely based on the data. It doesn't have emotion. It doesn't have lived experience. It doesn't have authenticity, which is what translators bring to the creative process. So again, where the writer is bringing their own lived experience and authenticity to the creative process, the translators equally bring in that kind of human interaction that the machine doesn't have. So certainly, I think how publishers could be using it and probably are using it when it comes to looking at literature in translation is by using the AI to translate the first chapter or the first couple of chapters so that they can read it for themselves and decide whether to commission a full translation of the book, if you like.
But that probably won't work, though. I mean, because with literary fiction, from hearing it from colleagues, literary translators who I know, and I'm sure you've spoken to as well, they say there's no way that AI can actually translate something in a literary fashion yet.
That's right, exactly. But I think what it can do for an editor that's looking to, maybe they've never published a book from Georgia, for example, and somebody says, well, I've read this book in the Georgian language, I think you should publish it. They can use AI to translate the first couple of chapters so they can get a feel for the book. Is it a story that they feel that they could engage with? And make that decision to then go ahead and publish the book and commission a human translation to translate the book. So it could possibly replace things like reader reports that translators often do. So where the translator will read the book and do a report for the editor can just translate the first few chapters for themselves.
But bottom line is that jobs are going.
Jobs are going.
And the book industry, I mean, how to what extent do you think the book industry will, parts of it will collapse as a result of this?
So I think it's inevitable with any technological change that the human interaction will change. It's going to happen across every industry, not just publishing, but certainly in publishing, I think it's going to be a lot harder at that entry level, and the administrative roles that often are undertaken early on will be replaced. I think that things like proofreaders may be replaced. And I think what people are going to have to do is just work out where they fit in the value chain and how do they move up the value chain? How do they adapt to, well, the machine can do this, but the human can do this? Or we still need the humans to control the machines, for example. So one of the AI companies that I've been advising does editing using AI, but it has to be driven by the human. It doesn't just, you don't just feed the book in and say, go edit my book, and then there's the finished product. It's still a line-by-line editing process.
Which happens in translation as well.
Exactly.
I mean, already there are certain books which are being translated in the first draft by AI. And the translators are, of course, very upset and angry about that. But the issue is that this is a really quick first draft. The translators are then asked to come in and edit this first draft, which can take them as long as translating.
If not longer.
If not longer.
If not longer.
But the issue is they are not being paid as much because they are not being asked to do the original translation. Which is a massive issue, is how writers, translators, in any of the creatives involved in creating books, how are they going to be paid well enough in this new era?
Exactly.
Who is making the money in the book trade with AI?
Yeah, I think the commercial arrangements are still the same, if you like. So I think we've still got somebody who pays for a book, and that will be the challenge in the future, is making sure people are still willing to pay for published content. That's going to be a big challenge that as an industry we face with all of this free information, AI-generated books out there. How do we persuade people to pay for published content? But then, publishers exist because of their authors, and I think we'll always put their authors first and make sure that their authors are remunerated properly when they are publishing their books. But people will be paid differently. I think there's a responsibility on publishers to really think about that and make sure that there is payment.
If you think the whole industry is based on human relationships, it's based on publishers meeting authors meeting booksellers, translators, going for book readings, coming to festivals like this. This is about human beings. How can this work? How can AI work with all of this?
So I think the way publishers are approaching it certainly is we can do more with the people we've got. So instead of saying we're going to replace somebody because of AI, they're saying we can do more with the people that we've got because of AI. So we're not going to shrink our team, we're just going to do more and we're going to do it better. So I think it's not a case of replacement. I think it's very much a case of enhancement and using the tools as a collaborator, not as a replacement. So especially, for example, using AI to generate copy for publicity, for example. That still needs to be checked by people before it can go out. But maybe we can do a lot more social media advertising because of AI.
But who do we know when
to trust? Make it more effective. Who do we know what,
It's the trust.
Comes back to the authenticity and the trust, doesn't it?
And that's not a dilemma I don't think we're going to be able to solve today. But it
definitely not.
For me, that's the bottom line. It's the trust, the transparency. What we know is real, is echt, is authentic.
And there's the new word that we've been discussing, the hallucinations that AI is still putting out.
I want to know from your position as a specialist in cybersecurity, AI and the book trade, and this hallucinations, which is an incredible word, which I thought used to mean that we had hallucinations if we'd drunk too much or we're high on particular drugs, but apparently it means something different.
Yeah, so I think
in AI,
we've been going ever since the internet began. We've always been taught not to believe everything you read on the internet, and I think the same's true at the moment with AI. You can't believe everything that AI throws back at you. And so somebody has to be the moderator of truth, if you like, and somebody has to be the fact checker. And so it can be complicated. AI is trained on data sets. One of the cases that's going on in the US is about how the models have been trained on material appearing on piracy websites. So where content has been stolen and uploaded into websites that can be factually incorrect, particularly if it's scientific research, for example, where articles may have been published on certain websites. Publishers take great care to retract anything that is then not proven to be factually correct, but the LLMs have already been trained on that material. And so you cannot trust everything that's been out there. And we need to be, who is the purveyor of truth?
Now there's a question. Who is the purveyor of truth? We have to come to an end for this.
Already.
I know.
We haven't even started.
But I think that's a way of keeping us on our toes. But I just want to recap, really, and to go over what we've been discussing, because there is so much in that, which we have, as you say, just touched the surface. But it's really, to go away with something with how we can act now, what we need to do, what are the absolute top priorities first of all, as writers?
So I think as writers, we have to have voices heard. We're at the start of the copyright battle, we're at the start of the legislation battles. And I think without the voices of creators, you've got the voices of tech on the other side. So it's creators versus tech, it's simple as that. And whose voice can be heard the loudest to influence the policies and the legislations that are put in place. We have to fight the fight for transparency, choice, and compensation. Yeah. So that's the first thing. But I think the other side of things, and we haven't had time to go into this in more detail, but is to see AI as a potential collaborator, to enhance our creativity, not to replace it at all, but certainly to enhance it and to liberate our creativity.
I think that's such an important point. I know that we're all very frightened about what's happening at the moment, and rightfully, and we have to take control of it. But actually, there is that sort of light, isn't there, that window, or the light at the end of the tunnel, to use another cliche, where there are some really positive aspects of it from a creativity point of view.
Exactly, and I will just do a quick flash of this book, which is Quiver, Don't Quake, which I think sums up the advice for writers perfectly. So yes, we should be quivering, but don't quake, because there can be a positive outset of this. And this is a book about how creativity can embrace AI. So not taken away from the fears at all. We should be quivering. But at the same time, there are some positive things out there that AI can bring us. And I think creative emancipation is one of those things. But as the book neatly says, is we need to learn how to dance with AI. We need to learn how to collaborate with it.
And he knows what he's talking about. And
he does.
He's called
Nadeem Sadek.
And he's a psychotherapist as well. He's actually studied this a lot.
He's a psychologist and an advertising professional, and we are looking for a German publisher.
Oh, maybe that's why she brought it.
But it is available in English. And I would recommend anyone in the creative space to read it and to see what the possibilities could be, like I say, without taking away from the very real anxieties that are out there.
And of course, talk about copyright again, and making sure that that is robust enough to withstand the slings and arrows of AI. But it is also about realizing that however much investment is going into developing artificial intelligence now at that level that we're talking about, that Silicon Valley level, that
mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. It's a lot of money. More money is going into that than anything. Billions and billions and billions of pounds and euros and dollars. But that bubble will burst, and it will then come down to all of us to control the ecosystem, as we like to call it, of AI. Emma, thank you so much. Emma House, very, very good to see you on this stage here in Austria.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Herzlichen Dank.